Welcome to the Dad Code Podcast, where real dads come for real talk and no BS. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We are your hosts, Blake Melton and Bradley Newberry. Good afternoon, Brad.
Man, it's a great afternoon when you get to talk about SEC East and the Florida Gators.
Yeah, all this Florida Gators shit on my table. Good God almighty.
Come on.
All right.
So thank you for taking the time to hit play, download this episode of DDS, Dads Discussing Sports, and we are about to do our 2021 SEC East prediction show.
Yeah, man. Can't wait to get started. I think not going to be quite as many surprises, I think, on this division of the SEC, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We're going to start right off with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Last year they went 0-9 in SEC play as well. They have a first-year head coach, Mr. Clark Lee.
Yep.
He used to play at Vandy. This is his first head coach position. Mm-hmm. He was the defensive coordinator for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He comes back home, 38 years old, salary unknown.
That's interesting.
My prediction would be, maybe about $1 million. A couple of dinners at Ruth's Chris.
And maybe a couple Vanderbilt polos, maybe. I don't know.
A box of Christie cookies.
That may be pushing it.
Old Vandy.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a decent job with the hire. They at least hired a former player that I feel like may actually want to be there. We'll see. The administration maybe trying at least to right the ship. I don't have a ton to say about the Vanderbilt Commodores other than I think everybody's going to get a win when they play them in the SEC. I don't think that this is going to be a year that they're going to want to remember too much, but just because their program has kind of been in shambles over the years, and ever since James Franklin left, they've kind of been searching. You know, they did the Derek Mason experiment, and it didn't really work out, and he kind of left the program in shambles, quite frankly.
I do like the hire as well. When you get someone that has a stake in the university, it's got to be nothing but a positive. So congrats there. They are returning their quarterback, Mr. Ken Seals. He had 1,928 yards passing, 12 TDs, 10 interceptions, and all three starting wide receivers return. So there'll be some.
And hey, they were also the team that had the first ever female to score a point in an SEC game last year. And hey, we'll see if that plays out again this year. I don't know if she'll be back, but hey, we'll see.
No. Yeah, the offense may be okay in this situation. Clark Lee being a defensive coordinator from Notre Dame, which they have good defenses there, right? So he's bringing down a little mentality. He's very young. I do think that it was the right hire. It's going to take a tremendous effort.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be in this for the long run in order for Vandy to be able to get anything out of this. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think it was a good hire, but we also got to keep in mind, I don't know how well defensive-minded coaches do in the SEC.
Okay.
And it's interesting because defense is it's probably one of the most important things when playing in the SEC, but they got to score some points. And I mean, Derek Mason was a highly touted defensive coordinator whenever he came in too. So I mean, we'll just see how it turns out. I'm hoping for their sake that the administration is being serious this time and is making a long-term investment both in their team and their facilities. Yeah. So we'll see how all that works out.
I'm predicting that their offense will be functional, but the defense is going to put them in.
It's going to put them in a tough spot.
Bad spot that they're going to be chasing a lot. I don't know if the offense is good at chasing. If their defense can hold. Yeah.
They're not going to win in a shooting match, I don't think.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. But I like the prospect of the quarterback returning with his three starters. I think that's a good start.
That's a good start, like you said. But can they win in a shootout? And because I think that's the only way they win games, and I just don't see that happening this year.
And unfortunately, Vanderbilt does not have a home field advantage to help them in those swing games. We talk about swing games a lot.
No, I mean,
Yeah, the stars, the games to watch, pivotal games. I actually circled the first 3 games of the year.
Yeah.
They're at home against ETSU, East Tennessee State. They have to travel to Colorado State, and then they're back home against Stanford. Look, Vandy, you've got an opportunity to do something here in the first month of the year.
Maybe. I've got those down as 50-50 games.
If you lose all 3, then my prediction, my prediction for you is going to be wrong if you lose all 3. So let's get started. Get started there, because then it's all. Oof.
Yeah, exactly. They've got to start off on the right foot if they want their season to go anywhere.
All right, so we'll move on to the South Carolina Gamecocks. Last year they were 2-8 overall, 2-8 in SEC play. They are coached by Mr. Shane Beamer, 44 years old, $2.75 million. He is the son of Virginia Tech legend Frank Beamer.
Absolute legend. Absolutely. Yep. Honestly, this hire actually scares me a little bit. It kind of makes me think that South Carolina might actually be serious this time. Not maybe this year, but he seemed at the media days, he seemed like he was pretty well spoken. Seems like he's got a good football mind. I mean, it's in his blood. Once again, his dad is an absolute legend at his own right. I mean, they fired Muschamp. That was a really great move, in my opinion. I think that he was dragging them down, but they need to rebuild. This will be another one of those situations where I think you expect there to be a prolonged lull, because, I mean, they didn't have a great year last year, so I think it's just going to be a little bit of a rebuild year on their part. But, I mean, they do have some bright spots. Their running back duo in Harris and Lloyd is going to be a good combination for them, and so maybe something they can build off of potentially.
Yeah, you mentioned returning running back Kevin Harris. He earned all SEC honors last year with 1,138 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6.2 yards per carry.
Really good.
They also return all SEC defensive end JJ Anagbar. But questions, there's going to be quarterback. They have a pretty good offensive line, believe it or not, but can the quarterback manage the game? Can they slow down the clock? Can they not have the costly turnovers?
It's weird coming from a team like South Carolina that they've never really had, in my opinion, that great of a quarterback. Even when Steve Spurrier was there, one of the offensive masterminds of this generation, it's like they've never really had that great of a quarterback. So you're right. It's down to, can they develop a quarterback? I know this is a new coach, and look, hopefully for them they can. But we're going to have to see it. The proof's going to be in the pudding.
They're putting their luck on Luke, that quarterback. Any other thoughts before we head to Kentucky?
That's all I got.
All right. We're going to Kentucky. The Kentucky Wildcats last year, they finished 5-6 overall, 4-6 in SEC play. Their head man is Coach Mark Stoops, 54 years old, scheduled to make $5 million. Some interesting facts about Coach Stoops. In 2018 with the Kentucky Wildcats, he broke the 31-game losing streak to Florida.
Yeah.
And he is the only coach in Kentucky football history that has been to 5 straight college bowl games.
Yeah. He's really cementing his place in Kentucky football lore, I guess you could say.
And that's hard to say.
Hey, look, could this be a big year for them is the question. Everybody's talking, a lot of ifs at a lot of different positions. And if you're a fan of the SEC, particularly the East, quite frankly, we hear these ifs all the time, every single year from Kentucky. So can they actually put it together this year? The East is pretty weak outside of Florida and Georgia this year. Could this be a time that they step over the Tennessees? They look past the South Carolinas. They don't even worry about them. Could they be in an easy third position, and could they threaten for that second position? Because I don't think they're overcoming Georgia this year.
I'm right on par with you here. I think the tone gets set early in an SEC East matchup when they get to play the host. They are at home against Missouri.
Yep.
And it's all starts there. And when we talk about Missouri in a second too, I'm going to mention that game as for Missouri, you've got to set the tone there too. So as weak of a matchup as it sounds, that game is going to be important to both of these schools.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 50-50 game for me.
It's a big one.
I mean, unfortunately, in the East, there are way more 50-50 games with some of these teams than there were in the West, and it's for the wrong reason. It's just because I think the East is not as strong this year as it's been in years past.
So they are returning a senior running back, Mr. Chris Rodriguez. He had 11 touchdowns for the team last year. But the thing is that can they find some consistency on offense? They finished dead last in all of SEC in offense. In the offensive category, a lot of ifs on both sides of the ball, which is kind of scary. You know, if this happens on offense, then maybe. If this happens on defense, then maybe.
But I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Swing. It's every year those ifs are there. It's like there's a lot of talk coming out of Lexington every single year. How great they're going to be if this happens, if we stay healthy, if Jesus comes down and anoints us or something. There's always something every single year. The question is that year that those ifs come to fruition.
But I'll tell you, strong resume building. When you take Kentucky Wildcats to 5 straight bowl games,
you can't argue with that.
That's pretty solid.
Solid. Mark Stoops has done amazing things there. I like him as a coach. I legitimately do.
Yeah. I'm moving on to Missouri next.
Okay.
This is the swing game with the Kentucky-Missouri, but Missouri finished 5-5 last year, 5-5 in the SEC.
Yep. They
are coached by Eli Drinkwitz, 38 years old, scheduled to make $4 million.
God, what are we doing? $4 million, golly.
I mean, he, in SEC media days, he called out the Kentucky Wildcats and said, this is the program and the matchup that swings the entire season for his program. He compliments Mark Stoops multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking over to the east at Kentucky and saying, hey, that's what we need to be when we start this road of needing to compete with the Georgias and Floridas of the East.
Look, I like the direct talking that he's doing there. I think that honestly that's good coaching because his players are listening. And he picked a game that's early on in the year that he said, all right, Kentucky, that's week 2. Mm-hmm. I'm going to call them. I'm going to tough talk them a little bit. I'm going to hype this up a little bit. I want my players to be ready for this. Yep. I mean, look, 38 years old, he didn't earn that $4 million contract for no reason. I mean, honestly, I think that's a big time coaching move. I mean, their upsides this year is going to be their returning quarterback. And some of their wide receivers are coming back as well. But hey, they lost a lot of defense to the draft last year. So is there defensive depth there? And, can they reload in the second year of a coach's tenure with a Missouri product to sell to these recruits?
This is a question that you'll hear about some of the upper echelon teams in the SEC East as well, but depth, mm-hmm. question mark. For a second-year coach, he's only had the year and a half or so to build his own roster. So I personally think it's going to be a tall task here for the Missouri Tigers. Mm-hmm. They are returning their quarterback, Connor Bazelak, who had 2,366 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 6 picks. A lot of yards. They are headlined by their offensive play. The defense is totally turning over here, which spells bad news when you're going through an SEC schedule.
Yeah,
but they'll be able to move the ball. I think that the coach Drinkwitz will be looking for more consistency, needing those ratios of touchdowns and interceptions to be better. Yeah. You don't want it to be the same. You don't want to be 7-7 or 7-6.
Well, yeah. You don't want to You don't want to be giving the ball back to your defense that quickly. Particularly when you have essentially a new defense. this year with not a lot of experience. You don't want to be handing the ball back over to him.
No, you don't.
Too soon.
And just to give a little props to Missouri, we did some research since our last show, and the campus and administration has spent money on renovations, over $90 million for an end zone project.
Absolutely.
And this year they'll be showing off their newly installed AstroTurf 3D3 field turf. So a lot of money being put into the program that we eliminated on a couple of shows ago. But as we touched on earlier, look, he knows the SEC East, it's highlighted with Georgia and Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
But strategically says he's calling out Kentucky.
Yeah.
Because he sees them early. He sees them as a like program.
Yeah.
And to put himself in potentially position 3.
Yeah.
To earn that right to take a look at what's above in Florida and Georgia. He's calling that out. And now, of course, when asked about Oklahoma,
oh boy,
potentially coming into the SEC, I heard a little bit of bitterness.
Okay.
When asked about Oklahoma, he says, look, Arkansas is our rival now.
Wow. Wasn't any no tension there. Seems to me like the newer members of the SEC are a little bit chippy when it comes to some other folks coming in.
They don't want anybody else to come in. This is our playground now.
They're gonna learn. If you're in the SEC, the right response is bring it. Not no, we don't want them to come in.
Yeah, if you're in the SEC, you're like everyone.
Absolutely. You want to be the best, you got to play the best.
Yeah. Well, that's all I've got on Missouri there. We're going to go up to old Rocky Top next. Yep. The Tennessee Vols, they finished last year at an overall record of 3-7. SEC play also 3-7.
Yep.
They have a new coach. They have Coach Josh Heupel.
Yep.
He is 43 years old, scheduled to make $4 million. He is known for having top 10 offenses, especially the last few years at University of Central Florida, where he went 28-8.
Yeah, I mean, no one questions his play calling ability, his ability to build an offense. I think in this situation, and I'll circle back to this, but we really don't know what this program is going to look like after the sanctions hit them. They know it's coming. They don't know what the severity of the sanctions is going to be. I would expect they're going to lose some scholarships. There's going to be a bowl ban for how many years? Who knows? But at the moment, I mean, Heupel is he's a young, really energetic guy. He's really a player's coach. It seems like all the players seem to really love him, actually. His talent level is it didn't really drop. It dropped. Don't get me wrong. Tennessee had a lot of really high-level players on the team that just weren't being utilized. But though he lost some due to Jeremy Pruitt leaving, the talent level is actually still pretty good. Particularly, I think he's got a decision to make at quarterback.
Now, I was going to ask you. I find the quarterback situation to be very interesting. As a Florida Gator fan, I'm like, man, it's a shit show. But when I step back and I do some research about it, it may be the most fascinating quarterback decision that's going to be made. Do you have what's going on in Knoxville?
We have Harrison Bailey, who is kind of the highly touted freshman. He's a sophomore. He's a freshman last year. He's got a lot of upside. Then you have Hendon Hooker. He is there. He's a different style quarterback. He's not a pocket passer. He's a little more athletic. And then you have the Michigan transfer in Milton, who he went out and got himself, and I will say it's a little bit interesting, that they only mention those 3 quarterbacks, because there are other quarterbacks in the cupboard.
That's right.
That they're just not talking about, but it seems like those 3 are getting the most attention here. And I kind of tend to believe that, like you said, it's an interesting decision, because now is Heupel looking at this and saying, yeah, Harrison Bailey's good. Yeah, Hendon Hooker's pretty good. But do I want somebody to fit my offense, or do I want to adjust my offense to fit a quarterback who's been here and who's pretty good? Because I think that I don't think that Harrison Bailey is a guy that's going to fit into a run and gun offense where he's got to do some read option work and things like that.
Yeah, there's no doubt this coach is known for offense.
Mm-hmm.
He even said at SEC Media Days, he's like, look, we're going to be a very entertaining team to watch on the field and from the TV,
Mm-hmm.
which don't step into that trap, because then it could be so much offense so quickly that you're putting even more pressure on a defense that struggled and that could struggle more.
You know, you and I have talked about this. This is the trap that coaches fall into that have not ever played or been in the SEC. They think that, I just got to score a bunch of points.
That's what he wants to do.
Look, scoring a bunch of points is great, but you got to be able to manage the game to where your freaking defense is not, out there sucking wind every 45 seconds. Because, the thing is, you if you go out there and you go 3 and out in 10 seconds, or you do whatever, you throw a pick real quick, or if you score real quick, it still can backfire on you if you don't manage your time and your clock well. So that's, that's what I have as the biggest question mark is, what about the defense? I'm not really all that worried about the offense, honestly. I think they have some weapons on offense that they could make some stuff happen for sure. I think the running back position I think they got some good young players. Quarterback position, they're going to have to make a decision there. Wide receivers, I feel like they got some options there as well. But what about the defense? The loss of Henry To'o was huge. So we're going to have to see how their defense fares this year.
That's what one of the questions I have written down is, what about the D? And a nugget about 12 straight losses to Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, but like their main rivals. But for a first-year head coach, put in a horrible situation by the previous administration.
Yep.
Your focus can't be there.
No.
Your focus cannot be thinking about Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Not yet.
No.
I did read some information about in his contract that, if there are 2 years of sanctions, then they'll automatically add 2 more years to his current contract, which I feel like is fair. If you're going to pause everything, then just give it back to him.
That's a great clause in that contract, because that was my concern, was that Tennessee was not going to look at this as a long-term project and rebuild, because you can't handcuff a coach if he gets docked half his scholarships, for 3 years and then want to know why he didn't win the SEC. The thing that I think that he can get his players to rally around this year is to be the spoiler this year in the East, because I really do think that the talent level is there. And don't get me wrong, I haven't really seen them play just yet, but they could get in some shootouts potentially with a high-powered offense. If they can figure some stuff out on defense, there's a chance that they could sneak up on 1 or 2 of these teams and end up having a pretty decent year. We'll get into predictions here in a little bit.
And I'm not even saying, you have to be a defense that holds teams to 20 or less points a game in the SEC play, because that's hard to do. But I'm just saying, hey, bend but don't break.
Yeah.
If you're giving up yards, come up with take away the ball. Get a pick.
Yeah.
About a little fun, punch it out.
You threw a number out there. I think that if they can hold teams to less than 30,
okay,
they might have a chance to sneak up on a few folks. I'm not saying they're going to go 10-2. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there's a chance.
Maybe I predicted them to go 10-2.
Okay.
We'll see later. But any other thoughts on Tennessee?
No.
All right. We're going to move on to Georgia. Georgia finished 8-2 last year. Many were disappointed with an 8-2 record. And 7-2 in the SEC. They are coached by Coach Kirby Smart, 45 years old, set to make $6.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
He owns a 52-14 overall record with Georgia and 1 SEC title.
Pretty impressive, man. He's kind of broken the mold of, in my opinion, of defensive-minded coaches succeeding. He's trying to be the East version of Nick Saban. he's got some good stuff returning. So
whoa. He's got some great stuff.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of stuff.
Yes, he does. JT Daniels at quarterback coming back, Samir White at running back, just an absolute offensive juggernaut, I think, coming down the pipe this year by way of Athens. I think that they've got a pretty damn good chance to dominate the East. The Florida game, man, that could be a good game. It could be. But I think ultimately Georgia might be able to pull that off, but it's going to be a matter of Kirby Smart keeping everybody focused, because Georgia has kind of a track record of losing that focus every now and then.
I think you've got everything, the perfect storm set up here with everything returning. The hype around the quarterback, JT Daniels. The biggest question that's coming out of Athens now is, can we keep him healthy?
Yeah.
Can we not get him hurt early so we can get into the SEC play and do some damage?
How quickly can we score points so we can get him off the field? That's what it's really about. That's the formula that his mentor, Nick Saban, uses for his quarterbacks, and that's why they stay healthy usually throughout the years.
So retooling juggernaut just like Alabama, man. It's proven over and over. The offense is loaded. 7 out of their 11 starters are back.
Yes.
Now, I will say, they are retooling in the defensive backfield, so the cornerbacks will be new.
Yep.
Their defensive line is pro ready.
Yeah.
So no problems there. They may be able to be exposed a little bit if opposing teams' offensive lines can hold up in pass pro. They may give up some plays through the air.
Maybe if they're pro ready on the defensive line, though, I mean, in general, that means that it's going to take some of the pressure off of the secondary, because the linebackers can drop back into coverage a little bit more and help in that manner. But we'll definitely have to see Kirby Smart being kind of Nick Saban's protege on defense, on the defensive side of the ball. I feel pretty confident he's going to be able to, if nothing else, scheme his way out of some of these games.
And some of the highlighted games, you start week 1 right away with a showcase game against Clemson.
Yeah.
This is not the same Clemson.
No.
This is not the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, Clemson Tigers. This is not the Jacksonville Jaguars running back Travis Etienne, Clemson.
Nope.
I think they win. I think Georgia wins that game.
Yeah,
just a little sneak peek preview at that.
I think they do too.
Another highlighted game, of course, you mentioned is the Florida game. Where I'd argue was that much of a game last year. Got out of hand.
Yeah, well.
So, but we'll get to Florida in just a minute. But boy, there's if I had a choice of 3 teams in all of the SEC, and I had Georgia, I'd be very comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. I how could you not?
I'd take it.
How could you not? So anyways.
Moving
on.
Moving to the swamp. We're going to Florida. Florida Gators, they finished 8-4 last year because they couldn't win an SEC title game, or they got their ass whipped against Oklahoma in the bowl game too, adding to that 4 losses.
Yeah.
But 8-4 overall, 8-2 in the SEC. They did represent the SEC East in the title game. They're coached by Dan Mullen, 49 years old, $6.1 million. He owns a record of 29-8 while being the head coach of Florida.
Not too bad. Dan Mullen, the quarterback whisperer, as I call him. Is Emory Jones his next pupil?
He's going to need to whisper loudly.
Yeah, so, I mean, what is the quarterback status down in Gainesville? Is Emory Jones the answer? I mean, I know we got to see some of them every now and then, but is he the guy? That's what it comes down to. I mean, defense, got to have defense, got to be better, always got to be better. They always just seem to be there at the end of the year. And this is they're going to benefit this year in the fact that Florida and Georgia are so far ahead of everybody else in the East, in my opinion, that it's going to be even more important for them to remain focused. And how well can Dan Mullen hold their focus throughout the entire year with the East being so weak? I mean, confidence will be high for pretty much the entire year. The Florida-Georgia game, That'll be an interesting to watch. That would be real interesting to watch.
Yeah, this is they'll have what I have written down here. They'll have 2 weeks. They'll be at home against Florida Atlantic, and they'll be at University of South Florida. They'll have 2 weeks to figure things out, because guess what? They're coming back home and hosting Alabama Crimson Tide. What a way to start SEC play.
That's it's like they're at home for 3 weeks. They're in Florida for 3 weeks.
Well, if you extend it out, then they're at home against Tennessee after that.
I know.
I mean, they're there. Look, my thing is, I go into these seasons with no expectations as a Florida Gator fan, and just hope for the best. I do think that Emory Jones, the pass run threat, that's going to be. How does that play out? I mean, what does that look like? They do have a couple of good running backs coming back. Pierce and Davis that combined over 800 yards. Through my research, Athlon Sports has their group of linebackers rated as number 1 in the country, with Miller, DeBate, and Burney. Defensive line features Zach Carter and Brenton Cox. So I think they'll have plenty of pressure coming off the edge there. All of their cornerbacks are back. 2 new safeties. So we'll see what happens in the backfield there. They lost a lot. Look, they lost a lot on the offensive side. Dan Mullen's recruiting is going to be put to the test here. He's going to have to show us that he's been recruiting correctly the whole time. Right. Can they retool? And the swamp, will that play a factor? I mean, they will be leaning on that swamp. They're going to be hoping that early game against Alabama is a 95-degree day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They want 90,000 rowdy people and a 95-degree day.
Yeah.
Like, get Alabama early.
They want it to rain the day before and it'd be humid as hell.
They want to get Alabama early. That's the only chance they've got. I've predicted that they lose that game, but we'll hear more about predictions in just a minute. But
I mean, you mentioned the recruiting. We're talking about depth, basically, is what we're talking about. This, like we spoke about in the SEC West prediction show, look, the elite level teams reload every year. No matter how many players they lose, there's always someone just as good, if not better, behind them. And like you said, it is incumbent on them to make sure that they are reloading and recruiting as they go along here. And we're going to find out whether Dan Mullen's been accomplishing that or not. So
we are reaching out to Matthew Parker as we speak. Matthew Parker is on the line. Thank you for joining us again here. We are talking about the SEC East.
My favorite.
Yep. So wherever you'd like to start with the SEC East, we kind of started with Vanderbilt, but if you don't want to go in the order like you did last time.
You started with the top?
We started with a founding member.
Started with the founding member. Well, Vandy, I do love. And starting with Vandy of the last 2 years, I believe, has won 1 game in the SEC. And at the end of this year, they would have, in the last 3 years, won 1 game in the SEC. They're going to be 7th, and they're going to go 2-10, beating ETSU and UConn. Now, as much as I pitched for Vandy to stay in the SEC, they're bad. Last year, they could barely, COVID year or not, they struggled to field a football team. Derek Mason did them no favors. I really do love Clark Lee. I think he's one of my favorite new coaches in the SEC. I have one that's higher than him. We'll get to that in a moment. I love Ken Sills. I love Cam Johnson. Everything else needs help. They are going to be lucky to win those 2 games. They're going to be dead last, and I don't think that there's really any chance they're not.
Yeah, we did like the fact that they're returning their quarterback with the 3 starting wide receivers, and but my goodness, it's a very, very tall order when we're bringing in the youngster, the defensive coordinator from Notre Dame. Tall order to ask in the first year, maybe even the first 2 or 3 years, but a little patience will be needed on West End.
I like the approach that they're taking there. They're being it's really interesting to watch them in Tennessee with two different new coaches and two different approaches. Vanderbilt's being very by the book, or like very military-like, I should say. You have to earn your numbers. You have to do all this stuff, and Tennessee's having ice cream parties. It's almost just an overreaction to what the previous regime was. But again, I do like the version that Vandy's doing. I'm not saying they're going to, win 9 games under this regime, but I think they can get back to, 6 or 7 type wins over the next few years. But very tall order. But yeah. I do like the way they're headed, but not for years to come.
All right. Totally agree.
Coming in at number 6, I have got the team that should be removed, South Carolina. They're going to be 5-7. And again, new coach there. They've got a great running back duo. But while they're great at running the ball, they are just awful at the passing game. They had 8 passing touchdowns last year. 8. We could field a team, and I feel like I could throw for 8 touchdowns. So much like a lot of the other teams, how they are in the West and why they're beat down, the only reason that they're not in dead last is because they're in the East. My next one is at number 5 is going to be Missouri at 6-6. Got a new coach last year, obviously with the COVID year. I don't really count that. It's more like this is your first year. You got a whole new off season, and I think losing Larry Roundtree was a massive loss for them. He really was the cornerstone of their team. Mizzou's kind of like one of those meh teams to me. I know they won the SEC East. I think it was their first year in the SEC, but they feel like there's one of those teams that's always just going to win 6 games. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, my prediction was right with you there. 6-6.
Yep.
I do. I guess I like the fact that they have a returning quarterback in Connor Bazelak, but the thing I called out with this guy was 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That ratio needs to be better.
Yeah,
that's awful.
It can't be 50-50 like that and expect to do anything more than be a 500 team. Exactly where I had them. I had them at 6-6.
Yep, same here. So far, I think you've been copying off my paper here.
I do. Have y'all given y'all's picks already?
No,
we have not.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask a question because I was curious where someone was falling, but I'll save that. So, number 4, Kentucky. Going to be at 7-5. Kentucky's running back room has the room to go crazy this year. But much like Missouri, they have got to. Like Missouri, but much like South Carolina, they've got to improve their passing game. Kentucky's been dead last in passing offense for 3 straight years. The defense is going to be the strength this year as it was last year. I just think that, again, going in the right direction, but I still feel a lot like that Mizzou type quality. Although, you know what, for Kentucky historically, 7-5 is a pretty good season. I know lately they've been better than that, but historically, that's a good year for them.
Look, man, it's like you've been listening in on our lead up to this, the whole podcast, when we were breaking this down. Kentucky Wildcats and Missouri, that's week 2. And to those outsiders, it doesn't sound like a big game, but to those 2 universities, what a swing matchup that is, week 2.
Yep.
It's going to set the tone for one of those programs to maybe catapult to an 8-win season. Believe it or not, Kentucky has been to 5 straight bowl games under the leadership of Mark Stoops.
I would, to push back on that, you're right. Stoops is doing great, but he's also been Kentucky coaching against a down South Carolina, a down Tennessee, heck, a down Florida there for a little bit. It's not the East of old that he's been coaching against.
Hey, but take advantage of it. Good job, Kentucky, for taking advantage of that. Yeah.
This is the one I'll go ahead and preface with I'm a Vols fan, and I'm looking through this through orange-tinted glasses. But I have Tennessee at number 3 at 8-4. And I actually struggled to not keep them at 9-3. And the reason being this, I am very high on Heupel. What is y'all's opinions on the new coach?
So I think that, obviously he's known for high-powered offenses. I think he is very much a player's coach. I think the guys love him. I think that he's going to rub some people the wrong way on the booster side just because he's outside of the Tennessee intelligentsia, if you will. But I think that he's going to put an offensive product out there that's going to produce some points. He's going to put points on the scoreboard. I think he's got a talent level that he can do some things with. And it's really going to come down to how can the defense respond this year to losing Henry To'oTo'o. And, how can he rebound there, in my opinion, is where he's going to – I mean, because there's some toss-up games in here. I'm with you. I have a hard time not putting them at their ceiling of 9-3, but it's really hard to call on some of these games because it's going to come down to what are these sanctions going to do to this team.
That's true. But I'm sitting here looking at it, and much like we talked earlier about the West and just being brutal for their schedule, looking at Tennessee's schedule, they could literally start 6-1, Bowling Green win, Pitt win, Tennessee Tech win, Florida loss, Missouri win, South Carolina win, Ole Miss win. That is not a ridiculous prediction that they could start. Now the back half gets much more brutal than that.
Right.
With, of course, you got Alabama. I mean, then you got Kentucky, then you have Georgia, but then you finish off with South Alabama and Vanderbilt.
Right.
I don't see why this team could not at least start 4-1. It could go the other way. They could have a Georgia State type loss against Bowling Green, one of the worst teams in football. If that happens, the wheels are off and they're done. But I don't see a way this team doesn't start 3-0.
Yeah, I hope they got the schedule to set up to do just that. Coach Heupel is known for having top 10 offenses at USC, where he went 28-8. So the pedigree is there. Mm-hmm. I asked Blake on this show, I'm like, look, he said at SEC Media Days, we're going to be entertaining. And that can be the trap. If you want to be entertaining on offense, are you putting your defense out there too many times over the span of a game?
I do believe that they will be entertaining, and maybe it doesn't benefit them this year, but entertaining is what everybody likes, right?
Right.
It's hard to be the quarterback or wide receiver recruited to the team that's going to win 14-13. You want to go to the offensive team. It's fun. It's the reason I subscribe to the idea of never hiring a defensive coordinator. It should always be an offensive guy because, if you have a good offense, your offensive coordinator is going to get poached.
Yep.
I just think the sky's the limit for this guy. I really do like him. And at number 2, really the top 2 are just based off SEC East being weak, and Florida's going to be number 2, right? They lost Trask, they lost Kadarius Toney, they lost Kyle Pitts, but they're also playing the Vols, Kentucky, Missouri, and South Carolina Vandy. The problem, and Bradley, you can tell me this, the main one there, it's their defense, right? They gave up 31 points a game last year.
They did. I mean, there's no questioning it. It's just those are the stats.
Yeah, I just struggle with that. But just looking at their schedule, I don't see how they don't go 9-3 there, and with major losses to Bama and Georgia, and then of course Georgia being the top ranked there, and Georgia will lose their first game against Clemson, who's the proper South Carolina team that should be in the SEC. But they will go 11-1 there, and then they're going to run the table after their first one. JT Daniels, y'all, is the real deal. He should have been starting from earlier on last year when he finally came in. They scored 8 points per game more than they did with any other quarterback. Offensive line is going to be a major advantage there than anyone else, even though I know Cade Mays is over in Tennessee. And the defensive line, forget the offensive line. The defensive line is the best in the country.
You should have heard us talk about it. Blake and I said defensive line is NFL ready.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm ready to see the draft and where all these guys go.
It's the only potential hole that I found in Georgia was if your offensive line can hold up. They've got a new defensive backfield. Their cornerbacks are new. They have number 1 prospects, Ringo and Kimber. They bring back a 5th-year senior in Speed. But I don't know. I don't know if any of these teams' offensive lines can hold up to even throw the pass.
I don't think it matters. I think
it's probably not going to matter.
Could be back playing defensive back, and the line's going to get to them so quick that they're just not going to have much of an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's just going to take so much pressure off of their defensive backfield that it's not going to matter.
Yeah, as of watching the Titans last year, you could have the best cornerbacks in the league with a weak defensive line. It doesn't matter. Eventually, after 8 seconds, somebody's going to get open.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you start up front, you're strong, and you get back there. I don't see any team in the East coming out other than Georgia.
Okay.
While I could see Texas A&M coming out of the West, I don't see there's any possibility other than Georgia with the schedule.
Gotcha.
Look at the schedule without Georgia coming down. So just another Georgia, Alabama, and I think we know who's going to win that one, right?
Well, I was about to say before you go, we know you've got predicted Georgia and Alabama, but what's your gut there? Are you saying Roll Tide?
Well, I will never. But it's going to be Georgia.
All right.
Oh,
All right.
J-
Good deal.
all right.
JT Daniels. That's the secret. That's the key.
Hey,
Okay.
Kid's
Let,
good.
let's
Kid's
keep him healthy.
top-
Keep him healthy.
top high school guy. I mean, he is there. This is going to be the final year that they break through. It's going to be Georgia out of the SEC this year. Both are going to make the playoff.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, we thank you so much for your insight and definitely ready to talk some NFL football with you. Thank you for joining us, of course.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to talk about how the Jags messed up their draft picks.
Woo! Shots fired.
Man, come
Still
on.
have a good one.
Shots fired. Wow. Parker left him speechless. I don't know if I've seen Bradley speechless in quite some time, but that was a shot across the bow as he was walking away right there. But anyways, hey, it's interesting that,
That
he
sounds
had,
like some hate.
Yeah, it is, but
Straight hate.
It is interesting that he had Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship and Georgia taking. He thinks that JT Daniels is going to take over the game, basically.
You'll
Okay.
hear my predictions shortly,
Yeah.
but remember, if you listen to the last podcast, I didn't even have Alabama in the title game. I have Texas A&M with the same record with Alabama, and because of the head-to-head, I had Texas A&M in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Yeah. So you are completely against the grain here, which is par for the course for Newberry. All right.
right.
So do we need to go down our predictions list? Did we
Yeah,
already?
let's do our predictions.
Yeah, we'll buzz through these real quick here before we get to our predictions of who's going to
Vandy.
win.
They were over. What do we got? What are we thinking?
Man, I'm thinking they're going to go 2-10 this year. They could go as low as 1-8, as high as 5-7, but I don't think they're going to approach either one of those. I don't think it's very likely they go winless this year, but they're going to struggle to get anything more than 2 wins.
So I've predicted 2-10. I don't necessarily know where the 2 wins come from. Parker was pretty confident what he knew, but you know what? My gut tells me that they don't necessarily get both wins in the first 3.
Okay.
I think they
I'm
definitely
the
get.
same way.
I think they get one there, and I honestly think they're going to win an SEC game. I don't know where. I don't know how.
That's bold. I had them getting one at ETSU and UConn. Those are the 2 games I'm thinking they're going to win.
Something tells me they may catch a team sleeping.
You never
Just
know,
enough.
man. You never know. I mean, it just depends on what kind of product they're able to.
And it may be
produce,
it may be you, Ole Miss. I'm looking at you,
Come on, Lane. Come on, Lane.
but
Don't let him talk to you like that,
2 and
Lane.
10. So that all 3 of us have them 2 and 10, right?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, totally agreed.
What about South Carolina?
South Carolina, I've got them going 4-8 and 1-7 in SEC play, as low as 2-10 and as high as 7-5. I just don't think. I think they're one of these teams that's got some. They got a good running back duo, so it's going to come down to how far does that take them. You know, so new coach. Maybe there's a little bit of a hangover, but yeah, I'm calling it 4-8.
Boy, I have predicted it 4-8, and I kind of circled some key games here. 2 of them being the last 2 games of the year, Auburn and Clemson. I mean, if you lose both of those, you're no better than 4-8. If you can win one of those, I mean, you might be looking at a 6-6 in a bowl game. I've also highlighted Florida. You get them at home, and at Tennessee, if you are trying to put yourself in a different tier because I think that you're in a lower tier right now. So if you're wanting to mix it up with the mid tier, then Tennessee game's a big game.
Yeah, that would be the one to win.
So 4-8. Missouri.
Mizzou, I got them going 6-6. I'm agreeing with Parker on that. I just think they're, like Parker said, they're just a 6-win team. I don't think that there's anything particularly special about them. Their defensive depth is not that great at the moment. We're gonna figure out real quick what kind of coach Eli is this year. So,
yeah, I think they're in a really tough situation. Eli long term may be very good at what he's doing, but only having just a year and a little change to bring in players and personnel that he wants, I think it's a tall task. I've got them predicted at 6-6, like we copied off of each other's paper. But all three of us have them 6-6. I think their swing games, as we mentioned, it was week 2 at Kentucky. I've starred the last game of the year since he called it out, his new rival, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And just like South Carolina, I put a big circle beside Tennessee. They are at home against the Vols. And
I think it's fair enough this year.
Two teams that are seeing themselves kind of in that second tier-ish.
Yeah.
Who's going to stand out above the rest?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Kentucky,
I'm calling it for this to be a pretty good year for the Wildcats. I got them at 8-4, 4-4 in conference play. They could be as good as 9-3. They could be as bad as 6-6. They've got a bunch of these games. I have them defeating Tennessee this year, but I think that's very well a game that they could lose. I think there's maybe a couple others in here that could go either way. Carolina, I mean, again, these are teams trying to step into, the limelight here. They're trying to step up a little bit here. I've got them winning against Missouri. So it's just a matter of, once again, which one of these teams is going to stand out. Yeah. And I think that Kentucky might be the one this year. I've
got predicted that they will beat Missouri as well. Maybe a little home field there week 2. I could see them. I can't believe I'm about to say that. I could see them winning 9, but I had to just scale back a little bit. My official prediction is 7-5. I don't know how that's going to happen. Whenever I was going through each team, I was like, wait a minute, I have too many W's here.
Yeah, I felt like it too. I had to go over them again because I was like,
can Kentucky be a 9-win team? Because when I was doing the win-loss thing and I saw that, I was like, whoa.
I mean, historically, they give some of these teams a lot of trouble, and some of them begin with an F and end in an A.
Yes.
I mean, they give Florida a hard time some year.
Florida was 5 minutes away from losing that game until Kentucky's defense just went to sleep.
I mean, they win that game, they're at 9-3 on mine.
Okay, so when I did the exercise, I had 9, but my official prediction is going to be 7-5.
Okay.
So Parker was 7-5 as well, and you had?
I had 8-4.
8-4. Yeah. I mean, we're pretty high on Kentucky.
I think so. I think we're bullish on Kentucky.
What do we got for the UT Vols?
All right. Tennessee, I think this year they're going to have a respectable season. I don't think that I've got them at 7-5, 3-6 in conference play. If Josh Heupel goes 8-4 with this team in this conference, in this period in this team's history, he deserves to be coach of the year in the SEC, in my opinion. But I've got them at 7-5, like I said. I do not have them beating Kentucky. Let's see who else here. I don't have them beating Ole Miss. So I have them as a high. They could be as high as 9-3, and as a low, they could be as bad as 4-6.
It's a lot of swing.
Again, the sanctions are going to play a huge role, I think, in this.
Okay. Before everyone thinks it's just hate, I went through the same program, win-loss, and I initially came up with 6-6, right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they have a couple of swing games, and honestly, they're 3 games in a row. You have at Missouri versus South Carolina versus Ole Miss. think you got to get South Carolina out of that. That's at home.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get that one. Can you beat Ole Miss or Missouri?
If you come out of that with 3 wins,
3-0,
that is if you come out of that with 3-0, you're going to be feeling pretty good. I don't think that they can do it. I don't think they win all 3 of those.
Man. All right. So here's what I did. I went 6-6 in the initial. I'm going to tick it down one. Okay. I'm going to go with the official prediction of 5-7. I think they just miss the 6-6. I think that they have the ability to win 8 games. I'm not as bullish on them as I am Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
But if when all this dust settles and it says UT Vols 8-4, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, no one would be surprised because you have the South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri even contingent that's all there together, and it's like,
who's going to
which one of you is really going to? And even if one of you stands up, are you really standing out? You know,
just be number one in the second tier.
I would argue that I think Kentucky's going to be that team this year, but I don't really think it means much because of how down the SEC East is.
So I've got 5-7, Parker 8-4, and you
7-5.
7-5. All right. How about the Florida Gators?
Florida Gators, they're going to have a strong season, 10-2, 6-2 in conference play. I've got them dropping games to Alabama and Georgia this year. I think they're going to have a good year, man, but I don't know. I don't see enough on paper to make me think that they're going to be able to get over the Georgia hump this year.
Yeah, I'm torn here. I did the win-loss thing, and I had them at 10 wins. With no expectations, my official prediction is 9-3. Because I don't know what Emory Jones and all what it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. Temper expectations. Versus Bama, as much as I'd like to see it, as much as I was hyping up I hope it's 95 degrees and 90,000 people there.
Sure.
They can't bank on that being a win.
Yeah, that would be a hard sell.
No, and then what makes me shake my head is they have to turn around and play UT the next week. Are they going to be able to field a team? Does it matter if they're able to field a team? I don't know, because the unknown is I don't know what the hell Tennessee is.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows. Tennessee's kind of that team that they could piss in a lot of people's cornflakes, for sure.
And then guess what's after that? They go to a place where they just came off losing a couple of years ago at Kentucky.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. So and they could be as bad as 8-4, in my opinion.
So I'm gonna lock it in at 9-3. Parker 9-3, and you went 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Georgia.
I got them running the table, 12-0. 8-0 in conference play. Could they potentially win or lose a couple games? Yeah, potentially, but I don't think they're going to. It's going to come down to the Florida game, in my opinion. I don't think it's really about Florida and that first Clemson game, in my opinion. Does Clemson sneak up on them? I think Auburn will be a good game, but I don't think Auburn has what it's going to take to beat Georgia this year. As Parker said, I think JT Daniels is going to be the guy that's going to take over the game. We'll talk about the SEC championship here in a second.
Yeah, Parker says the only game that they'll lose is the Clemson game, week 1, to start off 0-1.
Mm-hmm.
I am predicting that they win that game, and honestly, I'm not even sure if it'll be close.
I think they're going to set the tone early.
I do too. I think that Georgia sets the tone. I'm predicting them to go 11-1, win the SEC East, but they are losing to the Florida Gators.
Okay.
But this, I don't know what else to say that we haven't said already. This is the perfect storm. They've got it stacked.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is, can you keep your quarterback healthy?
Yep. Because
if not, this could fall to an 8-4 type season.
You got to keep that offensive line healthy. You got to keep them focused. They got to protect JT Daniels this year because he's going to win a lot of games for him this year.
So 11-1, Parker 11-1. You went 12-0.
Mm-hmm.
All three of us have Georgia representing the East.
Yep.
You and Parker have Alabama.
Yep.
I have Texas A&M in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think for the title game?
I think I'm gonna say that the Alabama Crimson Tide and Nick Saban's experience is going to be too much for Georgia to overcome, and I think he will continue this winning streak against his former assistants, and he will once again win the SEC championship.
What do I have written there?
You have Georgia equals SEC champs.
And believe me, that's not easy to say, being a Florida Gator fan, but Texas A&M versus Georgia. I have the Georgia Bulldogs if they can keep that quarterback healthy. I love defense, and whenever I see the defensive line is NFL ready, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm predicting Georgia to win the SEC championship. I may also, on this show, go ahead and predict that 3 SEC teams make the playoffs.
It would be the only justice, in my opinion, for them to do that. They got to have 3.
Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama.
They have to be there. If they had the kind of years that we think they're going to have, it would be an absolute travesty for there to be any fewer than 3 SEC teams there.
Yep. Well, we thank you for taking the time to hit play and download this podcast. The Dad Code presents Dads Discussing Sports. As we go off the air here, we'll show you all 3 of our predictions, side by side by side. But this was the SEC East Prediction Show 2021. We thank you so much.
Y'all be well.